way. What we do here is we read papers and we analyze the papers. This is in Culture, Theory, and Critique by Conor Heaney, The Disparity Between Culture and Technics. This was suggested. Yeah. Okay, so AI doesn't have emotions. Yeah, so this is the thing. This was suggested by Chevelin X. Yeah, well, the question is, does it need to have emotions to be human thought? Like, is that a requirement? Maybe it does not need that to have intelligent thought. Maybe it does, but then what theory of intelligence and like mind are we using? So yeah. And as always, this is my first time reading it. Feel free to ask me questions along the way. I will do my best to answer them, but I don't know everything, of course. And so mistakes will be made. And because I am a previously suspended streamer, please realize I am reading this. This is an academic journal. I'm not endorsing this. We're trying to figure it out. That's it. Yeah, see, that's Hub says, I would definitely say everything is just a statistical appropriation or approximation. I wouldn't, but that's a major position that like everything just is this sort of statistical, just sort of analysis is what's going on in the background. I disagree, but I know a lot of people agree with that. So it's like, yeah, I know that. If it's anything like human brain would be able to think but not make decisions. Yeah, so now we're getting into the weeds. Chev says, have you ever had the experience of having a semi-lucid dream in the sense that you maybe didn't need sleep or slept at night when you slept already for most of the day and found that consciousness closely copies it? Maybe this hallucination behind is unconscious. I've not really lucid dreamt. No, nothing like I don't have like, I have a very sort of, my reality is weird. Not my like sleep or anything. I don't like have lucid dreaming or anything like that. Yeah. So yeah, now we're going to be arguing about what it means by conceptualization or abstraction or any of these other big terms. And this is what happens a lot when we're discussing big words. People put all the work into like conceptualization or mind or whatever. And this goes back and look, if you look at the rhetoric, it all goes back to like, what do you mean by God? What do you mean by like the unmoved mover happens? Yeah. Okay, so, but again, yeah, could we build in emotionality, Gob? So these are the questions. But we need a theory of mind that has the emotions built in, I assume. But anyway, here we go. So we're going to read this, The Disparity Between Culture and Technics, Conor Heaney out of London. Here we go. Disparation. I don't even know what disparation is. Resolution and invention. In his principal dissertation, Individuation in the Light of Notions of Form and Information, Gilbert Mondin describes the genesis of perception. Okay, so we're talking some perception here also, which is also the genesis of form, in a manner through which it cannot be reduced to the passive or active phenomenological reception of general qualia of the particular properties of objects, etc. That is, in a manner through which perception cannot be reduced to an already individuated and substantialized subject, deploying a preconstituted faculty. I salute you. Thank you for the follow. Preconstituted faculty of perception in relation to a world of passive objects and their properties and qualia pre-given. Okay, so yeah. So basically it's saying, look, you can't derive perception from the objects. Fine. Like, there's something out there in the world, whatever it is, but we're not it cannot be reduced to like the phenomenon in the world. There's something else going on. Okay. Adam says, humans take into consideration other points of view, collective agreement, false information. Does an AI stop and reflect? Let me check with my AI brothers to confirm or corroborate on what was stated. Yeah. So, Dognot, maybe, yeah, maybe there's something else related to Balloon Knot. Who knows? Okay. The ontogenesis of perception is instead to be traced to a process of invention of a form, which is at the same time a solution to the disequilibrium between organism and milieu, manifest in some level of psychic tension. Okay, so this is just, it's some mind stuff, you know? I mean, there's a lot of big words here, but they're just saying it's mind stuff is going on when we perceive. Perception is an act of individuation as well as invention, indissociable from the organism's vitality, affective field, and emotion. Its metastability, Sensory history in relation to the world. Yes, this is just mind stuff, and it's historically motivated too. So your perception is your mind, and it's your particular history. Okay, I'm on board with that, just a lot of big words. One of Simonden's favorite examples of this is the resolution of binocular disparity or retinal asymmetry in the production of depth perception and binocular vision, denoted with the term disparation. In binocular vision, one does not perceive or feel either the image of the left or right eye in isolation, but instead the resolution of their disparity. Yeah, so the idea that we see in 3 dimensions, well, you could close one eye and you wouldn't see the same 3-dimensional space. So you could do this. And that's fair. So that's like, the 3-dimensionality is in some sense in your head, or the 3-dimensionality you perceive is in your head. What you see is not necessarily how the world actually is, because of course you could have an illusion of 3-dimensionality. Okay, tridimensionality is the inventive solution to the problem of bidimensional difference. The resolution is the meaning sense of the difference between the 2 data. I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't know what tridimensionality is. Fine. Or as Simonden elsewhere puts it, whenever the 2 disparate realities are symmetrically integrated, forming a new resolutive dimension, the signification that emerges from this inventive process is precisely the relevant information. Okay, so the 3rd dimensionality out of our 2 flat, because your one eye can only see, only in putting your 2 eyes together do you get 3 dimensions because you have the parallax. So that 3rd dimension is what is the this 3rd thing that you sort of emerges out of your 2 eyes. And you can, even if you're blind and you're just listening to this, you can get the same thing, 3D sense of space by the echo and effect. What's it called? Your 2 ears. A sound will hit one ear before the other, and that will actually make you understand what direction the sound is coming from. You can hear the sound on that side by the way it hits your head. So that 3rd dimension, by having 2 ears, allows you to orient yourself in 3-dimensional space. Suppose you want to represent a concept. What would you use? I have no mnemonic, to tell you the truth. I have no fucking clue. I don't use my brain to do that. I just do it. And so the idea that I would use my brain, that's a kind of reflective answer, but I won't ever consciously do that. If I want to hammer a nail, I use a hammer, but that's a different question. I can pick up a hammer, can go get one. There's no part of my mind I can go pick up and do that. Yeah, and some people are tetrachromats. Imagine that does perception of everyday color. Yeah, some people have 100 million more colors that they see versus everyone else. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you go argue with Ivan about these things. Okay, so this is the information. The 3-dimensionality is the information that's relevant. This information is conserved in this process, but is experienced in a new dimension, and this informational conservation combined with new dimensions is the sense of Simonden's concept of transduction. The disparity between the images of the left eye and the right eye are transductively integrated into a new dimension in binocular resolution. Sure. So, while the ontogenesis of perception is described in terms of the invention of form, Simonden seeks to replace the notion of form with that of information. The notion of information presupposes the existence of a system in a state of metastable equilibrium that can individuate itself. Information, unlike form, is never a unique term, but the signification that springs from disparation. Disparation is, as such, a disequilibrium harboring potential for systematic informational resolution from metastable state of problematicity and potentiality. None of this matters. These are just huge words. You think of shit, and your brain puts it together into an idea. That's literally all that's going on here. So your brain had to figure out you've got 2 eyes. They don't see the same shit. They put it together into a 3rd thing, which is 3 dimensions. That's it. So you've got informational resolution there. As Anne Savignargues, I'm sorry how I say your name, notes, disparation is simultaneously problematic and creative. Problematic refers to the disparity, the difference between the retinal images, insofar as this difference is not reduced, but on the contrary provides the opportunity for the constitution of a new dimension. Sure. Okay, you guys are arguing amongst yourselves. For Simonden, information is both interactive and ontologically constitutive. 2 caveats on Simonden's replacing the notion with that of information are, first, That part of the central motivation for this is, of course, motivated by his critique of hylomorphism, as well as, second, his nuanced and continuous engagement with cybernetic approaches to information. Hylomorphism is formed matter. So, like, this is a Aristotelian theory. So, like, you know, this is a U.S. quarter. I don't know if you can see it very well, but whatever. Use a piece of money in your location. So what you do is you have a piece of metal and you stamp it. That's what makes it a quarter. There's material that's hule, and morphe is the form. So you've got formed matter. Hule, hylomorphic. Hule is the matter, and morphe is the form. Morpheus, of course. And so, like, that's just a theory about how objects are. Okay. On the first caveat, Simondon rejects the hylomorphic reduction of matter to indeterminacy and the elevation of form as determining. Yeah, so matter bad, form good. Okay? So, no, rejecting this. Yeah, rejecting matter and form. That's it. Time, matter takes note, life gives it value. Yes. Yeah, I mean, the quarter, of course, has no value in and of itself, except for, like, whatever, like, metal is good, you like the metal for. But in terms of the U.S. government recognizes that as money, and that does give it some value, because as a U.S. citizen, I have to pay taxes in U.S. dollars. They don't accept anything else. And if I don't pay my taxes in U.S. dollars, guess what happens? They come after me. So... 2. Assumption of pre-existence and pre-constitution of form and matter prior to their relation. And 3. The connected treatment of the principle of individuation as being outside or anterior to the relation. Yeah, so you can think of, like, if it comes to the quarter, the metal and the form existed prior to this, but, like, you can also argue it never was a quarter until it was stamped as a quarter, and so it all came together at once. So there's different ways to sort of slice this. Like, yeah, the metal existed and the form existed, but the quarter never existed until the whole package was there. So it's like you're saying, well, all right, what actually individuated it? Was it the formed matter? Is that what it is? Like some abstract concept, or is it in the quarter? There's a lot of ways to break this down. Simondon seeks instead, as hinted above, to grasp the operation of individuation through exploring the obscure zone of their relation and becoming. What the fuck is this? You just call something the obscure zone? It's like, this is like, the hardness, you're hardcore, we're going into the obscure zone. Exploring the zone of their relation, the zone, yes, is precisely what Simondon also famously calls going into the mold. So yeah, so like I was saying, formed matter, there's a mold. His ontogenetic approach is one that seeks to follow the operation of form taking, contrasted with the hylomorphic approach, which remains outside the mold. Yeah, so you've got formed matter as like an outside concept, outside the workshop, only consisting what comes in and what comes out. Yeah. Alright, so still arguing amongst yourselves. Alright, so I don't know if this is making a whole lot of sense, but basically, we're just talking about this actually classic theory of what an object is, formed matter. And then they're saying, no, that's not what it is. You have some sort of process that it goes through. And it's not just sort of like a form and matter that you can think of outside the object. All right. On the second caveat. Simondon's notion of information, his informational ontology, broadly speaking, importantly develops on and differentiates from cybernetic approaches to the notion. However, the clarification of this term in early cybernetic approaches is not always clear. Ivan, thank you for the raid. How was your stream? Thank you, Nip Fox, for the very excited anime emote. Yeah, hi, welcome in, Raiders. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, coming in hot. Thank you. Shout out. We got the Ivan. Shout out, Ivan. Appreciate it, man. How was stream? And if, of course, if you have to go, like, take care of yourself, please do. If you want to raid and run, yeah. Yeah, and long. Yeah, fair. Speak of the devil. Hey, what's up, Globus? How you been? Unreal says, time to add some cybernetics to our occult activities. Yeah. Yeah, we've been having arguments in chat about mind and abstraction, Ivan. So, yeah. So, for those examples, 3D images can only recognize when one looks at an image a certain way. Crossed eyes or focus pointed. How they put it is new 3D form is this meta dimension, new sense of generated by the mental event and evolution. So, it's not like, we're not saying it's a new sense. It's just like, what is that sense? We're just saying, what is the mind up to when you build a 3D world out of two like, because both of our eyes can only see like two-dimensionality. So, like, how did you build that three-dimensional thing? well, what and how do you understand your reality when you're building the world out of this? Because we experience three dimensions, even though we only see two-dimensional things. So something is going on there, and that's the question. Yeah. So yeah. Hi, Raiders. If you don't know me, I'm Noah, Noger, Nogade, Nogureo, whatever you want to call me. It doesn't really matter. Just don't be a jerk about it. I'm a philosopher. I discuss philosophy on stream. We chat a bit, and then usually what I'm doing here is we read some philosophy and discuss. And so this is actually a little bit more on the continental side, but not like it's sort of a technical work still, where this is a sort of a technical discussion of a way that philosopher Simondon views technology and like how we experience the world. So it's kind of what's going on. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. But like, we read some philosophy, we try to figure it out, what's good and what's bad, and at the end, then we judge it. There is a rating system that y'all can participate in if you stick around to the end of the paper. So yeah, it's only, it's not too long of a paper. So yeah, let me know. And yeah, like I said, Ivan, if you need to take a break, you need a raid run, by all means. All right, where were we? Yeah, so we're discussing early cybernetic approaches is not clear. Claude Shannon's key work in this context, The Mathematical Theory of Communication, published in 1948, links information with entropy, putatively at the suggestion of John von Neumann, statistical unpredictability, and uncertainty. A message sent through a channel with more information is in this sense both more uncertain, and more entropic in contrast to the redundant message. It has less information insofar it is more predictable. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks again for the raid, Ivan. Norbert Wiener uses different terms and conceptualizes information as connected to a degree of organization. A more organized system is one with more information, in which entropy becomes a measure of the degree of disorganization. Whereas Wiener's approach appears to generate a duality between noise, entropy, and information, negentropy, Shannon's is one which actually creates space within the concept of entropy for both information and noise, insofar as both information and noise are elements of uncertainty. Okay. You did chuckle, you confess? Yes. I mean, philosophy is hilarious. Cecil Malaspina's lucid discussion of this is further clarified by her point that this distinction is one that operates primarily at the discursive level. As she notes, both were in agreement with regarding the mathematical method and even acknowledge and complement each other. For Andrew Iliadis, Simondon's entire approach to individuation cannot be dissociated from how he develops from and engages with cybernetics and the place and status of information, situating Simondon in that cybernetic lineage of Shannon, Weaver, and Wiener. Iliadis discusses Simondon's open informational schema or informational ontology, in which information is, as we prefigured above, not simply pre-given, but is related to the process of invention, transduction, problem resolution, disparation, or the move from metastability to temporary stability. Okay, so again, a lot of big words. It's just saying when we take information, we have to process it into some other thing that we actually are using. We're not using the raw data as is. We don't use the raw data from our left eye. We don't use the raw data from the right eye. We use the three-dimensional data to process our three-dimensional world. So that's what's saying. We don't process the data as it comes in. We do something to it, and it turns into something, a third thing, whatever it is, or a second thing that we then are actually working with. Because we don't think in 2 dimensions, we think in 3 dimensions, or we move in 3 dimensions. We understand that world's 3-dimensional. We don't think in two-dimensional like scenes. We put this together. Okay. So this is, if you're going to talk about information in this way, there's a question of what is the parallax of information, though. How do you have 2 different perspectives of information? Does that even make sense? Because like our eyes have a parallax, like one's over here, one's over here. Like that's the whole point of having 2 eyes. You get a parallax that gives you the ability to judge distances against each other by seeing around things. What does that mean in terms of information? Are there different ways of like viewing the world through the information? But already that's processing it. Brain mass does help. Does it? Computation ability does help. Yeah, but what does that even mean then? What does computational ability mean then? Like, we need a parallax. We need different perspectives. If that's what you mean by computation, sure. But, like, that's a very specific meaning. Like a dialectics of information by a kind of disparity processing. Yes, but what counts as a disparity in the information? Like, we would already have to know that, or we'd already have to have perspective on that to have a way of already judging certain information from a certain viewpoint and then other information from another viewpoint. So it's like, I kind of get what's going on here, but this is getting real slippery too. What do you mean we have different viewpoints within the information? Okay. So, Samandan offers a more open, processual, and inventive account, as much a contribution to ontology as to cybernetics. Information is conserved through transductive operations and successive resolutions of problematic fields of metastability, whether discussing the resolution of binocular disparity in the ontogenesis of depth perception or describing the history of technics. Yeah, see, they're trying to draw this binocular disparity into the history of technics. But what the fuck is that? I can tell you what binocularity is because I have two eyes, but I don't know what binocularity is in the history of technics. Adam says, they mentioned one view and contained noise. What would that mean for the functioning of all this? I don't know if we're going into actual information theory because they were mentioning Claude Shannon, the god of information theory, Canadian dude. But and so there was always the message to noise ratio. So anytime there's communication, there's metadata. So like, you see me talking with my hands right now. Does that actually affect the meaning, or does that hinder the meaning? Does it add to it? So that's the noise. What is the actual message and what else is extraneous to that? And so you could say, well, the background is noise here. And then my speaking and the way I inflect is not. And so this is the whole point, is they're trying to identify certain ways to view information. And so this is one of them where you've got, I'm only talking about the Shannon theory here, where you've got, where you've got the message and then everything else, which is some kind of noise, like the metadata there. But I don't know, Adam. That's just sort of my guess on why they brought it up. Say Hub says, for every piece of specialization in the human, like speaking, walking, there is a specialized function in the brain dedicated to understanding or computing, like Lego pieces. Well, I mean, that was the old phrenology. Like, you had different pieces of the brain does stuff. So I don't know if you want to go phrenology way, but granted, like, we're not that far out of phrenology. We still say this is where language happens. It's like, well, is that phrenology, or is that like fancy phrenology and we just don't call it phrenology anymore? I don't know. Yeah, no, Brian, they mentioned information theory here because apparently that's in the background of this. Shevlin says, I think Gilbert Simondon is influenced by the of Technics because of post-structuralism and the idea of perspective interpretation, maybe. That's what it looks like. I don't know the history here. Like, this is not my area of philosophy. I can't talk about the background of these people. A technium is anything created by the mind. Is that just a definition, Iger? But I mean, sure. Okay, and so Xenomonic and Viper are still discussing. Yeah, but like the question is, what is a perspective when you're talking information here? Like, you have to expand on that, because I understand what having two eyes and then you can have like 3 dimensions by having parallax. I don't understand different perspectives on the history of technics and how that can be combined to make a third view, like the 3 dimensions from our two-dimensional eyes. Okay. On the introductory note to On the Mode of Existence of Technical Objects, Simondon highlights this in the introduction of his ontogenetic approach to the technical object. The evolution or concretization of technical objects takes place through a schema of relaxation and not of continuity. There is a preservation throughout the successive cycles of evolution of technicity as information. Whatever. The concretization of the technical object is to be associated with its openness and its sensitivity to outside information. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere, because we've got outside information here. Like, something's happening, something's inside and something's outside. You should pay attention to this totally in your academic zone and then go for it. I mean, all the VODs are saved on YouTube, as always. So you can always go back. The VODs, I highlight these, so they are saved as highlights on Twitch. And although sometimes they break, and that, like, so not everything is saved on Twitch, and then I upload everything to YouTube also. I've got all but, like, say 3, I think, or 4 philosophy roulettes on YouTube. Sahab says, I mean, the brain quite literally runs with dialectic charge. Electricity, wouldn't that be crazy to think a neural network also demands electrical cost? Wouldn't be that different from any other brain? Yeah, but you know what? What also runs on electricity? My lamp runs on electricity. Like the lights in this room run on electricity. Like, the lights aren't intelligent. Like, the fact that there's electricity, lightning, like thunder runs on electricity. Okay, Boltzmann brain runs on maybe electricity, who knows? That's a brain in outer space, like, that's kind of cool. But like, just by saying it's made of the same stuff, it's like, yes, I mean, how panpsychist do you want to go? Like, you can go real panpsychist. Like, there's electricity in my mouse. Does that mean it might have some consciousness? Panpsychism says a little bit. So yeah. Unreal said, I tried to read Stiegler, who took up what Simondon put down and got through about 4 pages before giving up in despair. Not that anybody cares. Yeah, I mean, this is not for everyone. Yeah. But it performs one function on, like sunlight on a rock, light switch, night, day. Yeah, so now we're going into functional analysis, say hub, and that's a different argument, not an electricity one. So yeah. Chocolate says, hey, what's up, Chocolate? I think artificial neurons don't model at all the things actual neurons do. That's the question. Are the computers doing what we're doing? Maybe. Are they doing everything we're doing? Probably not. Are they getting close? Well, that's the question. How close are we getting? We don't really know. Okay. So we've got this openness and sensitivity. So we're finally getting some ideas here about how information is related to other information. So there's outside information, and that would imply inside information. Exactly, Vipers. We're still trying to figure that one out. All right, so a question not just of configuration of the technical object itself, but also the way in which it is integrated into the milieu in question and how this integration structures its operation. What concerns Simondon are operations, the convertibility between structure and operations. The theory of such operations is what he attempts to develop with his alagmatic approach or universal cybernetics. Again, big words. I don't care about any of them. This is just all introductory shit. In Recursivity and Contingency, Yuk Hui describes recursion as being both structural and operational. In the relation between being and becoming, being is situated as a dynamic structure whose operation is open to the incoming of contingency, namely becoming. These are old arguments in metaphysics. What is the universe? Is everything one, or is everything changing? Is it becoming? Is everything fire, or is everything one being? There's nothing new here. These are just rehashes. So it's like there's a lot of words here being said. I have no fucking clue if anything's happened, but like metaphysically, no. We're just talking about the same shit. The alagmatic approach is one which moves between structure and operation ontogenetically and through problems which, for Simondon, is vital in the creation of new values and for their unification in practice. To be more specific, philosophy, Simondon claims, is faced with the task of realizing the integration of the reality of technics into culture. While such an integration may never be complete, Simondon situates philosophy as having to pursue this task in terms of inventing a second analog to the magical unity, that subjectless, objectless, original mode of being in the world that for Simondon prefigured the original phase shift into technics and religion, themselves being the genetic conditions of science and ethics. Okay, so we had some way of being in the world, and then as we learn shit, we make technology, and we understand the world through that technology. Fine. It's like put into the world. So it's the phase shift into technics and religion. We're changing our world into something with our technology and religions. It is this alagmatic and ontogenetic perspective and investigation itself which, for Simondon, is the appropriate approach to philosophy's integrative task as it pertains to the disparity between culture and technics. Yeah, computational philosophy. The culture-technics disparity. Okay, so what are the things that we are doing versus technology is doing? Culture and techniques cannot complement one another while remaining in a static position. They can become complementary only through a kind of kinematic process of oscillation and inversion according to a regime whose appropriation or adequation to each problem is perhaps the highest task philosophy can assume. Okay, whatever. So many big words, I'm sorry. The relationship between culture and techniques constitutes, therefore, a key problematic field, a metastable state requiring the invention of new psychosocial and trans-individual dimensions and modes of relation. Okay, so basically, we just have to think of new things, the world in new ways, and then we change the world, and then we have to think of that in a new way again. It's just our culture is how we view the world, and then by viewing the world in a certain way, we change it, and then we repeat the process. In the introduction to his book, Meadow, the problematic of this relation between culture and techniques is centralized within the famous opening statements of the text. Quote, "Culture has constituted itself as a defense system against technics, yet this defense presents itself as a defense of man and presumes that technical objects do not contain a human reality within them." As I was saying, we have technologies in the world, and then we react differently with our culture, and then we recreate more technologies. And so the human reality is within our technologies. This is definitely speculative metaphysics based on a reinterpretation of old problems, synthesizing them. Yeah, I agree. That's what is going on here. I mean, does this bring anything new to the metaphysics? Maybe. It's got like some of the modern technical like flair for like philosophy of technology. So maybe it's saying something new. I don't know what's going on enough in the background here, but the idea is that basically, okay, we've set up a dialectic between culture and then the products of culture, the technology. I'm down with that. Like, that makes some sense. What are we going to get out of that? I don't know. But like, that is a fine way to view part of modernity. We make stuff and then our culture reacts to it, and then we have to react to the way the world is that is now filled with our technology. Okay. What does it mean for culture to constitute itself as a defense system against technics? It is, first and foremost, the denial of the human reality of the technical object. It is, second of all, our attendant alienation from the technical object, which is an alienation born from a misunderstanding, an incomplete mode of relation, and an omission of techniques from culture. We alienate ourselves with respect to techniques. It's like true. It's like we don't want to be our technologies. We're like, I'm not my phone. Like, really, I'm independent from my phone. Are you? Really? This culture-technic tension manifests itself most prominently in two attitudes or modes of relation. First, there's that attitude which treats technical objects as pure assemblages of matter. Yeah, so like, is my phone just an object? Is it just physics? And that's sort of reducing it to something that, like, it might as well be a rock in that case. Such an attitude excludes techniques from the world of culture and reduces their role to that of utility. Yeah, like, it might as well be a hammer. I could hit stuff with it like it was a rock or like a hammer. Second, there is that attitude of fetishization, which either fears techniques, supposing that they are animated by hostile intentions toward man, like we're getting with the AIs at the moment. We're afraid of like the singularity. Or raises technical objects to the status of sacred objects through an idolatry of the machine. The people who want the singularity to take over. I had a friend in college. He basically wanted machines to take over. He hated humanity. And he was like, I am waiting for our machine overlords. And he was a computer scientist. So he at least knew what he was talking about with respect to this. Both modes of fetishization, though this is a term Simondon does not use here, give rise to technocratic dangers. The fearful fetish producing the desire to control and subdue machines and place them in the complete service of the human, and the sacralizing fetish leading to the pursuit of the creation of the robot in the hopes that it will allow life of unlimited power, free from danger, anxiety, weakness, and so on, proceeding also via the subjugation of machines and similarly charged by resentment. Category theory and information theory turned me into an animist. It can happen, yes. Both are dismissed by Simondon. In his later essay, Culture and Technics, the relationship of tension between these two terms is returned to and described as one in which a given culture becomes the repository of values, constituting a kingdom of ends, while technics is tends to be a kingdom of means that must sustain a being under the authority of the kingdom of ends. Okay, so the technology is helping us to have a culture. Okay. Unreal says, we could end up with a Manichaean duopoly, a good AI and an evil AI forever in battle, both using us in the fight. Could. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those sort of like cosmic things where we're just pawns in some great battle. that we have done this to ourselves with our AIs, like, okay, but like, yeah, sure, but we've definitely been pawns in, the battle of the gods before. There's nothing, I mean, you're saying Manichaean, when's Manichaeanism, like, for all I know, that's an ancient Greek term. It's like, we're stuck within, like, the battles of the gods. This is nothing, like you said, this is nothing new. Okay. The positioning of techniques under the domain of means is cultures practicing a sort of self-alienation. Technics as means applies perhaps only to pre-industrial techniques, insofar as pre-industrial techniques consisted largely of short-term and minor technological gestures, which effectuated only slight or no environmental modifications, and thus instituting no long-term feedback effects. I don't know if this is fair. I think this is unfair to like old cultures. I think we had long-term effects on the world even back in the day. It's just now we can kill ourselves very fast. You think it comes from ancient Persian religion? Yeah. Old ideas, exactly. Chef says, like the Gnostic notion of the true deity and the evil demiurge. Like, yeah, we're in this sort of grand metaphysics talks at the moment. Like, and we're just saying, well, are we going to do this to ourselves now? Have we now just created our own gods that we're going to be stuck between? Okay, we have surpassed, Simondon claims, the time where techniques could be positioned as mere means. Yeah, so like back in the day when we had like, a hammer and that's all we had. Industrial technology's vast environmental modifications continue to have extensive long-term feedback effects, the momentum of which appears unceasing, and further, the feedback effects of such environmental modifications make techniques a veritable component in evolution. Yeah, so things are adapting to eat like plastics now. So it's like, we're just stuck with this shit, at least for a while. When culture as a system of ends positions techniques as a system of means, it thereby attempts to keep technical activity in a state of tutelage. Culture cannot, and especially not in an age of post-industrial techniques, where technical development is a continuous and permanent environmental intervention with long-term consequences, and each isolated technical activity can thus be read as an engagement with the future in a way the isolated technical activities of pre-industrial techniques cannot in the same way, contains technics. This is a fucking terrible sentence. I do not appreciate this, Mr. Conor Heaney, or whatever your pronouns are. Person Heaney. I do not appreciate this sentence. The sentence should just be, culture cannot contain techniques. It's got this fucking 4-5 lines of text in between that stuff. Adam says, if our cultural milieu in this dynamic is in flux and we cannot step outside of our milieu of technology now, since it sounds like it fosters a classic philosophical problem, how can we then evaluate or fully understand past cultural milieus? For example, one cannot step into the same culture twice in this view, as there's no way to relive a culture in the 80s and its technology with vinyl records, cassette tapes, big hair, cable TV, no matter how retroactive we work at knowing it. I know maybe my worry is premature, jumping the gun, or more to be said in the paper. This has always been a problem. It's not a now problem. It's always been a problem. At every point in history, we've had like a history where we look back on other stuff. It's like, well, how do we ever understand what they meant? Well, we do the best we can. I don't know if this is unique to our times. Yes, we are living in weird times. Things are different now than they were in the past, but like you can read their stories, you can read their concerns, you can do a little bit of like understanding of like what they meant by what they said, because it won't be the words won't mean the exact same thing anymore, but like you can do that and we can do the best we can. But that's always been the situation. Like, how do we ever do that? Well, that's why people are ancient philosophers, because they go and they look at what other people said and be like, what could they possibly have meant? And then sometimes they come up and like, oh, what they said was actually smart given their time and place, what we know about them, and that gives an interesting perspective on their world. That's one of the reasons people like ancient philosophy, is because it provides an alternate perspective. Yeah. Okay. Like, how do you remember the 80s? Well, I was alive in the 80s. I was pretty young, though. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, we're saying, though, this is the point. Technics has reached a new order of magnitude. Yes. We're very special now. Everyone always thinks they're special. The tension between culture and techniques in this sense is in this sense a problem that must be resolved at the level of the individual and the collective, at the psychosocial and the trans-individual in relationship to the technical. Okay, yeah, it's like, okay, and what are we going to do about it? Hardy har. Who knows? I have no fucking clue. Yeah. It's a lot of words on these pages. This is a dense paper. The creation of the technical object is at the same time a relation to the milieu and a modification of it, with successive modifications transforming the milieu itself, and therefore the conditions of action for those within it. Yeah, stuff happens and we have to deal with it. A transformed milieu creates new problems, stimulating further modifications. Technical objects are themselves subject to evolution through human mediation, and the evolution of culture seems indissociable from the history of technics. Yeah, this is all like, yeah, we've had technology and we've had culture and, things evolve. Okay. What Simondon calls the major or pure technical gesture is an act of culture in the true sense of the term. It modifies the living species' environment and arouses an evolutionary process. Again, like, what doesn't? You need to do something big, apparently, but I'm not sure what is special about that. Such major gestures in Simondon entertains the example here of spaceflight, shift culture and transform the given ends a culture may entertain. Okay, so was shifting the sort of goals of the culture as a goal-oriented thing. Okay, fine. So sometimes you can actually point to stuff and be like, well, everyone changed their idea at this point. Like, again, we've been dealing with discussions of healthcare in the U.S. Maybe we could say the murder of the CEO has shifted the discussion, and this would be a major discussion of how we are dealing with healthcare, which is which would be a technology, healthcare in the United States. That would be like, you could say that. I don't know if that counts, but I'm trying to figure out what a small scale issue would be, because otherwise things are always changing. This is one of the key sentences for which he cannot, for Simondon, elevate culture to ends and subjugate techniques to means, insofar as the evolution of techniques, as with major technical gestures, themselves transform ends. Yeah, so the healthcare industry has transformed life in the U.S. That was the technology of that stuff has changed how we live and the culture here in the U.S. It is the minor technical gestures which can more appropriately be described as utilitarian. To enclose culture within a preconstituted kingdom of ends is only possible if one ignores or represses techniques and their potential to continuously transform potentiality and normativity. Viper says healthcare reform is just like right to repair, but wetter. Kinda is. But I mean, it's not illegal for you to do biohacking either. So, although maybe it is, but right to repair is you can biohack yourself or whatever. A milieu is a T-milieu over the T-monad of technics. I have no idea what that sentence is, but yeah. It is at this juncture where we can begin to think about the role or status of politics within this problematic field of the technics-culture relation. When considering the potential of spaceflight as a major technical gesture, for example, Simondon nonetheless laments how such projects are still marked by both the particular cultures from which they emerged and from the competition that spurred that effort. In this sense, Simondon could be read as situating the political as an aspect of an enclosed culture, focused in the intercultural transmission of a tradition, alienated from technics, and thereby as a blockage to major technical gestures and to the reintegration of culture and technics. Yeah, I don't know, Shevlin. But that's okay. I don't have to know everything. Category theory jokes. Yeah, I do not know enough category theory to get that joke. At the same time, however, it is not so simple to claim that Simondon was simply anti-political or approached it as a blockage to technics. Yeah, so again, keep in mind that political technology, like politics, the way it's set up could be seen as a technology that is basically trying to control what people do, and so that would be a blockage to change, really. I mean, for good or for better or worse, I guess. So yeah, it's a blockage to technics. So it's a blockage to technical things. It's also a blockage to ends, because you don't know what the government's going to do or politicians are going to do. Indeed, in the introduction to the book, Simondon explicitly indicates that his ontogenetic approach to the technical object and in his proposals for a new approach to culture and its regulative role in relation to technics holds political and social value. Yeah, so we're going to change the way politics acts within our culture. In addition, the two aforementioned modes of how culture can constitute itself as a defense system against techniques, as reduction to matter or fetishization, also discussed in the introduction of the book, are difficult to parse from the question of the political in this problematic field of the technics-culture relation. Yeah, because you got to remember, political structures can be seen as a technology too. Like, this is an institution that can be a technical thing. So either it's working for the culture or it's working as some sort of anti-cultural thing that we have to the culture reacts against, like fuck damn the man, like punk thing. You have to go against the political structures, or the politics is working in like for the culture. What is it? So this is the problem here. So it's problematic. And this is so in two senses. First, insofar as the distribution of access to technics is a political question, the technocratic danger is indissociable from the question of access to technics. So we were discussing this before again. Who has access to technology? We have a technical class in this country and in this world. Who has access to that? And that's a political question too. And access to techniques is also a question of Simondon's encyclopedism, which will be touched on below. Ontogenetic approach should probably be highlighted as the goal now in the paper, kind of like in the same way epigenetics can reform physiology or the form that is created by the transindividuation dynamics of DNA and RNA. And technologies of governmentality. Yep. Yeah. I don't know I don't know enough about this stuff, Shevlin, to say where it's going. Sometimes I'll tell the chat, I know where we're going. We're going to go talk about this stuff. This is not stuff I know enough about. I'm going to criticize all this for the wordiness here. I think I'm trying to explain it the best I can. I don't know if I'm right in my glosses of what's going on. The fact that I haven't had to go back and be oops, I was wrong, means I feel like I'm following, but I just don't know what the I don't know what the goal is of the ontogenetic approach. I just don't know enough to say so myself. I mean, you could be right. Okay. Second, insofar as any harmonious or resonant technics culture relation for Simondon is one in which techniques are not reduced to subjugation or utility, but rather would involve a level of integration, reciprocity, and mutuality comparable to the conductor-musician relation. Okay, so now, is it actually helping us? The language Simondon uses here is often politically intonated. If there is a reign of the human over technics, such a technocratic reign is one he describes as one inspired by the unbridled will to conquer. So now we've got a will to overcome our technology, pure culture. Chev says I'm doing a pretty good job. Thank you. I'm also trying to see connections from my commentary. Thank you. That's the goal. Okay, further, at the beginning of part 2 of Man and Technical Object, that's Mito, the book we've been discussing, Simondon goes as far as to make the... thank you for reminding us. I did not remember what it was called, though. Thank you, author, for bringing this up now that we're in the middle of the book, paper. Simondon goes as far as to make the political and normative claim that there ought to be a sort of equality between humans and technics. Okay, well, let's see what Simondon said. Quote, the prime condition for the incorporation of technical objects into culture would thus be for man to be neither inferior nor superior to technical objects, but rather that he would be capable of approaching and getting to know them through entertaining a relation of equality with them that is a reciprocity and of exchanges, a social relation of sorts. I mean, come on. Are we my brain immediately went the wrong direction. It's okay, so we have sex dolls and we have to be that's equal to a person. No, it is not. That's the whole point of having toys, is that they're not people. You can treat your objects differently than you would people. No. But I mean, the idea that there's technical things like government or institutional political structures, maybe along those lines, there's you have to have greater respect for political structures. Maybe. Okay. I don't think he means physical technology, but technology of communication of cybernetics, perhaps. Yes, I agree, Shevlin, but it's hard to make that distinction here. Social functioning technologies like media. Yeah, that's what I mean, politics. Institutions like media and politics. But it's hard to separate out different kinds of technologies. Media technologies. We're using media technology right now. Twitch. I am broadcasting from my room into all the whoever's watching. You could be in any part of the world that has internet connection at this point. So there's all sorts. I've got microphones. I've got I've got a touchscreen laptop I use for a stream deck. I've got 2 monitors, a webcam, like all sorts of shit. I'm sitting on a chair. That's a technology. That is really important technology for my streaming, that I have a chair that I can sit on. Like, how do you separate out what counts as like a media technology and then the physical technology I'm using? Viper says you can't elevate a fleshlight into a woman, but you can reduce a woman to a fleshlight. Seems regressive. That's the point. It's that that's where my brain went immediately. Like, that is a terrible thing to have, like, regressing, like, people into objects in this way. And it's like, you don't want to do that. I think that's terrible. And so the fact that this, even at the political level, the equivalence is being made is worrying to me. Chef says, I guess there's a kind of slippery slope between hierarchies. We'll have to see what he means by equality or exchange. Yeah, that's why I stopped, because I was like, let me see what this equality or exchange meant. Maybe there's a distinction, but once you start technology talk, it's very hard to distinguish. That was the whole point, was where they said earlier, you could reduce this to the physicality, but like, that's the wrong way of viewing it. Like, you don't want to reduce your phone to the physicality of the phone. That's or versus the fetishization of it, making it seem like it's some great thing. There's some sort of equality here, but that also doesn't seem right. Yeah. Okay. But we have to continue. Approaching and getting to know technical objects here is about going into the mold. That sounds also very creepy. I don't know what that means. Going into the mold. In addition, and on this occasion, discussing the human's alienation from Technics, Simon notes that, quote, the true path towards the reduction of alienation would not be situated within the domain of the social with the community of working class, nor in the domain of the inter-individual relationship that social psychology habitually envisages, but the level of trans-individual collective. Okay, so maybe this is what you were getting at, Chev, is that the whole point is that there's the level of trans-individual collective, whatever the fuck that means, but that's the technical area that's important. I'm willing to bet the author owns a fursuit. Why? Do you think they're running the internet? Simondon thus seeks a sort of culture, technics, egalitarianism, as well as the pursuit of disalienation through the trans-individual collective. I have no idea what a trans-individual collective is. I guess that means something to some people. Culture must incorporate technical beings in the form of knowledge and in the form of a sense of values, in order for the false culture techniques tension to reach a new resolution, and such an incorporation can also be intersected with the development of a trans-individual relation which incorporates the culture of technical activity and knowledge of technical objects according to what Simondon calls their essence. Yeah, I need to know what this trans-individual collective is. Otherwise, it's like, well, okay, you're just arbitrarily making a distinction where that fixes everything. Like, does that actually fix anything? Or why can't I reduce people into objects? Because that seems implied. Okay, it is important to underline how this resolutive process is an ongoing one insofar as the disparity of culture and techniques is problematic, creative, metastable. Relating to the technical objects according to their essence, that is, in terms of the object's ontogenesis, its structure and operation, is what Simondon calls the medium or support of the trans-individual relation. All right, so now we've got trans-individual collective and trans-individual relation. Relating to the technical object in such terms is to relate to the technical object as a carrier of pure information. This is where I'm starting to get scared. What the fuck is pure? Like, information, okay, we have definitions of that. What the fuck is pure information? There's no pure in my world. The integration of culture and techniques is thus to be associated with the individuation of knowledge about techniques. Okay, Simondon see, now we're talking about knowledge also. So pure information and knowledge. What's pure and what's pure knowledge? I don't know. Simondon envisages an encyclopedism as a pedagogical and thus to do with psychosocial initiation, and we claim political project for the integration of culture and techniques, envisaging a re-enlivening of a universal encyclopedic spirit. Seeking that second analog of the magical unity in this integration is of note that Simondon describes the encyclopedia or encyclopedic spirit in terms of magical initiation, maturity, freedom, and objectivity. See, this just worries me. Anytime there's like, oh, we're just going to call this magical, what the fuck? I don't want, like, what is magical here? Like, really? I want this not to be magical. I want to find out. Because if something's magical, that just immediately implies there's nothing more to it. There's no more that we can know about it. It's just magic, full stop. That's the end of it. I don't like that sort of thing. Chev says, maybe trans-individualism of trans-individual in the sense that he began with that the duality of resolution should be seen as a translation of evolution culturally, like when he said intersected with the development of relations, a way which does not confine evolution but opens up for life having a psychological universe or cosmotechnical view of the culture, kind of like Yakui entertains with writing symbolic systems. I'm down with us having a relationship with our technology and that affecting our culture. That seems perfectly normal. We build stuff, then we have to deal with what we built. Sure, that's fine. But like, what does that even mean? Like, then why can't you just say that? What's trans individual about that? I don't understand what trans individual that the word is doing for us. Like, am I not an individual in this? How am I not an individual in this? Like, am I somehow related only as an individual through my technology? Okay, but he didn't say that. Like, I don't quite get that. What the sense is that there's a duality of resolution. Okay, but like, yeah, like, why is that trans individual? Like, why can't you just say reality of, evolution with our technology? Perhaps, Vipers. Perhaps this is a love letter to the author's AI girlfriend. I have not looked into Deleuze. I'm not. I don't do enough Continental. Relating to the idea of virtual and new philosophy of subjectivity. No, I don't know. I'm a very bad analytic philosopher, so I don't. I mean, I dabble sometimes. I'm a little promiscuous with my philosophy. I will read lots of stuff, but like, I don't know Deleuze, so I can't comment on it. Zen Mnemonic says, I get the sense that the idea is to elevate the value of assemblages of techniques, would say the methodologies of cultures, ways of knowing, being, and organizing, but ironically it's totally veiled in the techniques of Norbert Wienerisms. Yeah, and that's the problem. I don't know what this seems like the critical thing right here, that we need to understand this transhuman collective and this trans individual collective and this trans individual relation. And it's like, well, we're like, maybe it has something to do with like people overcoming our whatever we were, but that's not what was said. So I don't know. That's the problem. All right, let's read this quote. The encyclopedia also manipulates and transfers forces and powers. It too performs an enchantment and draws a circle like the magic circle. The encyclopedia makes initiation universal and thereby produces a sort of rupture in the very sense of initiation. The encyclopedia is a magic cipher and is all the more efficient as it has been built with a more precise, more exact, and more objective representation of its model. Each individual capable of reading and understanding possesses the vault, so that is the magic cipher of the world and of society. Magically, everyone is master of everything because he possesses the vault of the whole. From a psychosocial point of view, every manifestation of the encyclopedic spirit can appear within a society as a fundamental movement expressing the need for attaining a state of freedom and adulthood. That sounds like it'd be wonderful. I have no fucking clue how we attain such an encyclopedia that just moves us forward in our lives. Oh, the first paragraph of Anti-Oedipus is wild ride. Yeah. We are the Borg, you will be assimilated. That, I mean, kind of sounds that way, Adam. You're right. It's like you get this encyclopedia and all of a sudden you just attain something that you didn't have. Whatever, you're just attaining freedom and adulthood, whatever they mean here. I don't know. Okay. It is, in fact, a new technological encyclopedism which will bring an end to our alienation and even our liberation, or more precisely, a meditation from Simondon. Okay, so we're going to get this new way of looking at the world through some encyclopedic understanding of how our culture exists with technology. It's like, yeah. Chev says, how would you delineate the cybernetic revolution and the ideas of information ecosystem and the idea that everyone has a kind of decentered knowledge of culture which allows the virtual to be concretized in the way that Deleuze conceptualized the singularity as being the ground to the self which everyone shares but no one owns? Well, I mean, that's because how you understand the little Deleuze I've read makes me think harder about this than I usually would. I don't. Like, that's frankly, I just don't think about this stuff. This maybe like my deficiency that I don't think about this stuff. But like, what do you mean decentered knowledge of culture. It was never like the idea that it was ever centered anywhere was probably some of the 18th century or Enlightenment bullshit that we have, like these like schools where that's where the knowledge is. I don't think that is ever how it ever was in our history. It's only sort of a hangover from like arrogant white old guys in university saying, oh, we're the ones who know stuff. And so it's like the idea that like this is there was this kind of like there never was centered knowledge. There was only decentered knowledge. And so the idea that like this is something new or something cybernetic, I'm a little bit confused about like that. That's all. Yeah. Well, that's kind of logocentric view, right? That culture and knowledge is only linear, rational knowledge, perspective and interpretation have no role. Yeah, but like that's kind of my point, is that like we never had this. So like what, like, is that what they just mean by trans individual? That we don't really have a centralized understanding of knowledge? That's not a very strong claim. It's like, okay, but then what's going on? Like that isn't going to get you anywhere. Like that's not going to attain you a state of freedom and adulthood. Like no way in hell. Like how is understanding that like there is no one repository of knowledge that you gotta learn is going to somehow make you like grow up? It's like, okay, yeah, that might be a good thought to have, that there's not just one thing to learn. But like that's not going to do the work here, I don't think. Yeah. Hey, I have a point. Yeah, I don't know enough Derrida either. Like this is like I'm asking questions of like what's going on because I don't understand where they think they're gonna get like the work being done here. What decentered or not? What's the goal development spiritual from film? Yeah, this is my problem. I don't see how like where like we're starting here and getting there. It's like, okay. Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't know Derrida. I don't know what Derrida said about cybernetics. Sorry. I just like not my like you go ask me about some like shit in Frege, I might know it. Mnemonic says, I'd say decentered knowledge would be another way of pointing to Illinois Ostrom's cultural commons. Okay, again, more like not my area of philosophy. I don't know enough about this. Okay, where were we? Yeah, so having entered a new technical epoch, I mean, I'm okay with that. We've got more technology now than we ever did. The fact that things are weird now is fine with me. That's not my beef. New technical epoch with the advent and continuous intensification of digitalization, the question of political economy in this space between technics and culture is of crucial importance in the direction of these directions these technologies are taken and for what purpose and ends. I am actually 100% down with that. We have a lot of problems with social media and politics right now. So like this is fair. Like I don't know what we were going on before, but like this is fine by me. The digital presents new opportunities and new dangers, as a number of authors in this issue highlight. Yeah, that's fine. The issue. We are at the issue finally. Hooray, the issue. Is a key starting point in this special issue that the question of politics of Simonden's Dumont. Okay, so this is actually an introductory essay to a special issue. Good to know. I did not know that. And the sum of the problems in this field gestured towards above is a lively starting point for thinking on how we might read Simonden today in milieus in processes of digitalization. Frege was the logician who came up with the second order logic, right? Or was that Peirce? I get them confused. It's Frege. Frege was the one who introduced, moved from the old Aristotelian syllogism and adopted some actually Stoic logic to make the current quantified logics. So yes, it would be Frege is credited with that. Peirce was right there though, also. The political and the question of our relations with each other and with techniques occurs in the space between culture and techniques in both exacerbating and potentially resolutive vectors. Following from the 2017 publication of the long-awaited and anticipated translation by Cecile Malaspina and John Rogove, the Dumont, this special issue seeks to contribute to what will no doubt follow in the years to come. That is a surging of interest in Simonden's fascinating and rich work, which crosses and intersects at various points with the philosophy of technology, process philosophy, ontology, the history of philosophy, and political theory, to name some examples. While Simonden has been an important figure in French philosophy, particularly the works already mentioned of Gilles Deleuze and Bernard Stiegler, Anglophone work has repeatedly lamented the lack of a translation of this text. There have been recent studies on and development of Simonden's work, either in or translated into English, but there remains gaps in the literature. With this long-awaited translation published, this special issue seeks to make an initial and hopefully, significant contribution to the further establishment and study of Simonden's work in English. What's up, It All Costs Money? We are reading something. So this is a continental flavored philosophy. So this is someone writing on a author, Simonden, who is discussing the relationship between technology and culture and how they sort of like interrelate. Yeah, so OG split from the continental fill, yeah. Demode, do they mean the La mode or is this something different? Hi, by the way. Yeah, Dame Karen. I don't know. This is Simonden. You have to... I don't know anything about Simonden. So it's like, it's all about Simonden and their stuff. Yeah, how you doing? It all costs money. I hope you're having a good day. Okay. The authors in this special issue each approach Simonden in a singular way, deploying specific concepts in the resolution of problems outlined. In addition, and as already been gestured towards in preceding sections, it is not at all the case that we can easily delimit the fields of analysis for which constitute politics within such an inquiry, traversing as this theme does technical objects, their genesis and concretization, to the individuation of knowledge to the level of trans-individual collective. Again, so we're talking about political technology, like the institutions of politics for people who just joined as a kind of technology, like our political structure as a kind of technical advance in trying to get things done, but also that we have to struggle against. We thus remain focused on this thematic of the cultural-technical relations, and some of its multiple entryways are how the papers in this issue can be considered when taken together. There are a variety of points of interaction between the papers, and the structure and ordering deployed here is suggestive of one possible reading vector. What's the trans community have to do with this? Nothing. I've been complaining about this terminology all night, actually. I don't know what the trans individual collective is. They're just starting at the social. Basically, that's, I think, all it is. It's a special term for a certain way of viewing social structures that deal with the political. And so it's like, that's trans individual because I guess we can interact with political technology in certain ways. But I've been complaining about this term all night. I don't know what it means. Yeah, sorry, the name is confused because it's a lot more feminine and not masculine. Vipers is unhappy with the paper. Yeah, so I don't know. It all costs money. I've been complaining about it too. It may be a technical term in this area of philosophy that is like easily described if I fucking knew what it was, but like it. On the other hand, I don't think it matters. I think it actually doesn't matter. I think this is one of these things that can be ignored. It's a bullshit term. There's probably issues with it, but like for everything else that's been said, it hasn't been necessary. It probably does way too much work in terms of like, solving other problems, but like as far as understanding the problems at hand, this doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just a simple concept hidden in too many words. Yeah. I think we universally are unhappy with the paper. I am a little bit not unhappy with this, to be fair. I don't know anything about this, so I'm learning about what the fuck's going on in this area. Am I really unhappy with it? Like, I don't care in some sense. Like, I find it interesting. Thanks for the follow. Yeah. No, that's fine. Feel free to ask. It all costs money. Chef says trans individuation is like a social fabric term, but it's vague on its own. It may have to do with subjectivity and how we think about it on different layers. That's kind of what I mean. It's like it's vague and it's solving too many problems, but we can talk about everything else that is going on here without understanding what trans individual is. Yeah. So anyway, if anyone doesn't know Globus, go follow Globus. He talks AI news and technology and all the stuff related to that. Smart dude, and streams a lot, so you can just go chill and work and lurk or whatever there too. So, what was glossary 50 key terms in the work of Gilbert Simondon. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Xenomonic. But yeah, like for the problems outlined here, even though this is obviously something they need to rely upon, we don't need to know. We don't have to care about it for what has been said so far. Okay, so we're gonna read about what other little things are going on in the rest of this special edition of the journal. The first subsection, information, begins with a paper by Cecile Malaspina, which develops and investigates one of the points mentioned above, namely Simonden's elusive ascription that the technical object is a carrier of pure information. Okay, see, this is something I complained about. What the fuck is pure information? And so someone is writing a paper on what the fuck it means. Good. This curious claim by Simonden forms the starting point for Malaspina's investigation in terms not simply of the question of the integration of culture and techniques, but also of the relationship between information and entropy, as well as between the subject and the collective through the notions of axiomatic saturation, ordering, and closure, to name some examples. So this is all hand-waving at this point. It doesn't matter. Go read the other papers if you're interested. Yeah. Following this, Mick O'Hara's piece explores some of the aspects thinking about what it is to go into the mold, following Simonden's critique of hylomorphism with embodied and inactive accounts of processes of energetic transformations, which is developed towards thinking about the materialization of digital objects. Yeah, so again, I have a stream. This is a digital object, is my stream. How does that actually happen? What's the process of making it? This is, there is a point there. How does a digital thing become real in our minds? Granted, how does anything become real in our minds? How do you individuate this quarter? Like, you guys can't see, it's like a digital thing on the screen here, like a little thing. And even in my reality, how do I individuate it versus everything else? These are not well-answered questions, but you can talk about this stuff. Okay, O'Hara continues the Simondonian critique of hylomorphism as an inadequate conceptualization and practice of how we relate to and produce objects, but takes this into the digital context through both the question of information and the increasingly relevant issue of what he calls developing on Hui's work on the digital object, the digitalized object. Okay. Yeah, Bitcoin are digital items. Exactly. So this isn't a crazy thought. People were giving this paper a little bit of shit, but the idea that people are discussing this, maybe you disagree with how they're discussing it, maybe you disagree with everything they're saying, but these aren't crazy people. They're not. That's the whole point, is that Bitcoins are digital items, and people are talking about this, and they're trying to come up with new ideas about the relation of these digital things in our culture. Keep in mind, they're talking about something that was published in 1958. Yeah, they don't get a pass. This paper's from 2023. So, it's basic bad French I can't. Yeah, that happens too. So yeah, this is a 2023 paper. So anybody writing something here has to make it relevant to the now. Okay. The second subsection, and I'm losing my mind. Yeah, I was like, how close am I to 3 hours? Yep, 2.5 hours. The second subsection, Technics and Practice, continues the special issue with Stefano Mazzilli-Shell's exploration of Simonden's work in combination with his research on makerspaces, that is, spaces where makers investigate, explore, and participate in the ontogenesis of technical objects. It explores the ways in which we might think of the ways in which such maker spaces constitute the type of educational spaces of technological literacy for which Simonden calls for in the resolution of the culture techniques disparity, as well as exploring the limitation of these spaces. Yeah, so people have to learn the new technology, and how do we understand the places where people get access to technology? Is it the computer lab in school, or is it a maker space? What is it? Yeah, don't worry about the terms at all. It all costs money. There's a lot of ontology thrown around. Onto something. Well, there's a lot of whatevers. It doesn't matter. Bless his heart. Yes, exactly. Following this, Juho Rantala considers the intersection of Simonden's concept of the trans-individual, which, as was noted above, is the precise level where Simonden thought that the combat against our alienation can be conducted alongside blockchain technology and the related processes and practices that have developed alongside it, such as smart contracts. What the fuck does that mean? That means I don't understand that sentence. How does the trans-individual exist alongside blockchain technology? And that can't be what Simonden meant, because Simonden was dead by the time that the blockchain was invented. Okay, I don't understand. To what extent could such technology form the basis for inclusive financial institutions and practices, or as informational commons? I have no problem with informational commons, like this sort of thing. I don't understand what the trans individual is. Just us as part of some giant technological thing? Fine, but that existed before. Could this technology be put to work in the service of new political and economic projects, combating alienation and toward the integration of culture and technics? Ontogeny, go to paleontologizing. You'll hear this all the time. Okay, yeah. I'm going to play Hearthstone. Listen, thanks for the lurk. It all costs money. Shevlin says hylomorphic dualism, or rather its hidden flaw and subsequent critique, is what gave rise to organic philosophies in the continental tradition of Schelling, and how he thought of unconditional philosophy of a productivity of nature versus products without reduction but construction, as in the empiricist tradition, very influence related to his talk of digitalized objects and collective subjectivity. Yeah, so again, you have to remember what is hylomorphism. That's formed matter, but like these things that are like ongoing processes of like ongoing things that are created, like the internet or say, blockchain stuff, that doesn't work in terms of formed matter so clearly because it's an ongoing process and it's being modified in unknown ways. There's no form to that, and that's fair. So you have to get past. That makes sense if we're going past hylomorphism, which is, the old, from Aristotle, theory of objects. Ontogenesis, growth and development, yes. Yeah, so you'll talk about, like, ontogenesis even in just sort of, like, how animals grow. Yeah. All right. Zinmach says individual, first of all, is defined as the systematic unity of interior psychic individuation and exterior collective individuation. So it's just individuation inside and outside? Okay. Unlike the inter-individual is therefore not simply a bringing together into relation of the individual, the trans-individual makes subjects intervene insofar as they can carry a charge of pre-individual reality. Yeah, see, this is why I want to smack these people. Like, they define trans-individual in terms of pre-individual reality. You've explained something I don't understand with something else I don't understand. Ignotum per ignotus. You've explained something that we're ignorant of with something else we're ignorant of. Like, don't do that. Like, that doesn't help anything. What the fuck is pre-individual reality then? Like, you have not explained something. You've just made up new fucking words. Thank you for the attempt, though, Xenomonic. I know that's not your fault. I'm not shooting the messenger here. Dame Karen says in terms of dinosaurs, they use ontogeny generally to discuss the common error of mistaking juvenile organisms for new species. Pre-individual reality is a smackable phrase. Yes, exactly. Chev says pre-individual reality sounds a lot like the singularity flux philosophy of Deleuze. Sure, it's a flux capacitor. That's what it is. Wayne's brain says, before I even looked up who Simondon was, I guess that they were French. I don't even think I've heard French philosophy who I like. Yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody. But, like, again, people are using this stuff to talk about some of, like, these new things, like blockchain and maker spaces, and discussing it. And so if, like, Simondon helps people understand this, more power to them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Alright. The third and final subsection is entitled Control, Critique, and the Digital, which builds from the already indicated point that, of course, we exist today in a completely transformed and continually transforming technical epoch from Simondon's own. Yeah, so things are moving at a different speed nowadays. That's fine. Given this, can Simondon's work still be used in the attempted reintegration of culture and technics? Do his concepts still pertain to this era of the increasing cybernetization of everyday life and of digital objects? What of the question of political economy and the relation between culture and technics from the perspective of new forms of control and new modalities of power? Yeah, so is this already outdated? And what can actually be updated from stuff that was from the 1950s? A number of papers in this special issue confront different dimensions of this problem. Mercedes... God damn it. Who named their kid Mercedes when your last name is Buns? Mercedes Buns. Fucking parents. Okay. Asks us to consider technical objects in relation to developments in artificial intelligence and the ways in which AI is becoming increasingly used to calculate meaning, itself usually the domain of culture rather than technics. The impressive lists of feats that AI can perform are growing simultaneously with general further integration of AI into our lives. Indeed, this is precisely one aspect of the cybernetization of everyday life. Buns asks us to approach the status of AI and its blending of technical and aesthetic functions with care and criticality. The ontogenesis of AI remains to be explored and adequately critiqued, while its integration into our lives continues. The role and status of AI is fast becoming a node of increased political importance to think critically. No, that's evil. Something's evil. It's definitely evil. Dame Karen. Zenamok says, I get the sense from skimming the glossary is that the pre-individual is a state of being before individuation. That is when you're a baby and don't really have a personality, and then acquire an identity in relation to the culture you find yourself in. I mean, yeah, Zenamonic, but that's not going to help us anything. So who has someone has a brother named Seymour? Seymour Butts? Seymour Buns. Okay. I got you. Seymour Buns. Neil says, Frank's philosophy really went off the rails with Sartre. He was high on coke while writing a lot of his stuff. Burks and Ravason have interesting things to say, but were influential to the American pragmatists. And going back, Montaigne was a goat. Well, yeah, Montaigne, but that's hundreds of years ago. That's like saying, like Rene Descartes mattered. Like, yeah, that's true. Montaigne matters. Apple Co. recently said that ChatGPT will be merged with Siri. Okay, so it'll be in everyone's pocket. Important. Mercedes' parents have ensured that she will never be taken seriously. Yeah, there was a guy in college. His last name was Nietzsche, not Nietzsche, Nietzsche, and his first name was Frederick. Like, and so it was Fred Nietzsche. I was just like, really? And you're a philosophy major? He's like, yeah, I know. It's like my parents' fault. Yeah. Yeah, so now people are just criticizing. I don't blame them. Early modern philosophers matter, to coin a phrase. Yeah. Yeah. The second paper in the subsection is from Daniela Voss, who raises the issue of the relation between Simondon and Marx, or between Simondon's account of the genesis and the invention of technical objects and the social, political, and economic context in which such genesis takes place. Voss argues for the centralization of this context, giving close consideration to the processes of invention, casting suspicion on some aspects of Simondon's own account, which fails to take this into consideration. Chauvelin says, Bergson, Whitehead, and Deleuze all herald from a strain of continental philosophy who try to transcend the skeptical philosophy of post-structuralism by retrieving early notions of life and subjectivity in the transcendental tradition. Yeah, I mean, Whitehead, can you put Whitehead into post-structuralism? Isn't he too early? But the other people, maybe. I don't know when Bergson was alive. But, like, yeah, if you're going to do process philosophy and stuff like that, yeah, you're going transcendental. So that's fair. Like, I have no problem drawing from that tradition. Like, that's not a problem in itself. It's what you do with it. So, yeah. Okay. In the following piece by Pierluca D'Amato, probably, or D'Amato, don't know, sorry. A different approach is taken, where Simondon's work is deployed as a precursor to Deleuze's famous late work on control societies. This piece pays particular attention to the topological configuration of the milieu, to the move from Euclidean to Riemannian spaces, a smoothing which describes our current era of modulation and control. This analysis confronts digitalization through thinking of the individual in its hybrid individuation, and individuation which functions as a mechanism of control of our own individuations. The digital D'Amato argues inverts a relationship between who is monitoring what in the relation between human and technics. Yeah. No problem, Dame Karen. You can be sorry. I have to deal with reading all this stuff. Yeah, Chauvelin says, yeah, I put Whitehead into transcendentalist philosophy, but modified greatly, yeah. Okay, so Bergson is from that time too. Yeah. Thank you, Unreal. Did you zone when you explained how culture wasn't just a species of the Technics genus? The claim was, Vipers, that people react against the Technics. Like, we have, like, the technical stuff, like the AIs, and we say, no, we're different from that. And so, like, time we have the Technics, culture is just supposed to be a reaction against it. And like, how are we special? What do we do that makes us different from our technology? I think that was just an early claim on that's how things go back and forth. Like, we do something different, but then that makes us make more technology. And then we have to, the culture reacts to that new technology. But yeah, so this is all this. But culture is a technology. Culture is meant to be our technology, I think, as opposed to what we put out into the world. But like, that's the tension here. That's why at the beginning they were saying everything's unstable, because there's some sort of human thing that's going on, and then we make culture, but the culture gets turned into the technology out in the world. But like, yeah, that's the circular here. That's it's Hegelian sort of, it's a process. Like we do something, then it becomes part of our world, and then we react to our world. And so there's some sort of detachment of the technology into the world. And so whatever that detachment is, that's the technologicalization of our world. So yeah. I mean, is this the best way to view things? I don't know, but like this on the grand scheme makes some sense, I think. Okay. Let's just finish this up. In the last piece of the section and of the issue, Anne Alembert takes up the precise question of alienation mentioned in a number of times throughout this introduction, as well as Simone's hopes for an integration of culture and techniques, and her consideration of this is developed through working at the intersection of Simone and Stiegler's recent work on automation and the future of work, as well as with related work such as French people, Rouvroy and Baron, I guess, on algorithmic governmentality. Lambert centralizes Stiegler's attempts to develop on Simone's project, focusing on how this could be leveraged towards not simply the combat against proletarianization, but also the creation of new economic and political forms and processes which adopt and invent in response to the contemporary technological, political, and economic context. Chev says, some people in the American philosophical continental sphere even believe that Kant was split in the transcendental philosophy that was close to Descartes than, say, Hegel or Goethe, who had different views on culture, who are mirrored in the archaeological view of history and Foucault. But Kant would sort of be the point where the skepticism begins, just on the other side. Yeah, I mean, Kant a lot of people draw on. So it's like people really, really draw on Kant in some continental circles, but he's drawn on plenty by other people as well. You don't have to be continental to refer back to Kant. So it's like, yeah. So it's fair. It's just different people like draw on different things in Kant because it was so rich philosophically. Unreal. Brian says, by the way, regarding Bergson, I just read Emily Herring's Herald of the Restless World. Very accessible book written on Bergson. If anyone was interested, good to know. Yeah. And sure, Shevlin. I mean, there's lots of different takes on this stuff. And so, you put 10 philosophers in the room, you get 11 opinions. Okay, these different entry points into the evolving reception of Simone's thought and on the thematic on the cultural techniques relation it is hoped can play some role in the coming years where Simone's thought will have continued and growing relevance faced with a disparity between culture and techniques in both theory and practice in need of new interventions, new dimensions, and new modes of resolution. Okay. Wow. But what we do now is we rate the philosophy. So this was in part a overview of how Heaney sees philosophy in Simone's kind of philosophy, what's going on, and then sort of a summary of a bunch of other things in the second half of this paper, or the last third of the paper, or quarter, whatever it was. So how do you feel about this? If it gave you fun ideas and that made your brain dance, say, give it a brain dance. If you thought it talked about deeper, existential artistic dramas, like what it means to be human, existential things. Nog Scream, Ouroboros for deep ancient ideas. Nog Knife for slicing and dicing arguments. Nog Navel, was it navel gazing only for academics? Nog Turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. Vipers thought this was very navel-gazing, a lot of poop underneath, did not live up to the claims it made, and just gave it a global vote nay. So yeah, you can also use the global vote yay and vote nay and my vote meh if you thought in the middle. Overall, like anything in the green will make the I do calculate an overall score, makes the score go up. Anything in the red will make it go down, and the vote meh will basically even out the score if you put a bunch of mehs there. Unreal Brian, you came in late and didn't get your feet under me for what the author was doing, so I'm passing vote. That's fine. Thank you for being here. Adam says there's one episode of Rick and Morty where the Statue of Liberty turns into a killing bot, and Rick comments, of course, the French inventors sent a Trojan horse. I mean, that's also very Ghostbusters, too, where you make the Statue of Liberty come alive. Thank you, Globus, for the rating. You can fix it yourself if you want to do Nog Grapes yourself. I'll fix it later if you don't. Doesn't it sort of dilute the scores when I vote in all 10 options at the very start of everything? Hey, Frank, how you doing? That particular string of ratings, if you vote that way, that is ignored by the bot. So the bot actually, that particular string right there, if that ever shows up where it has like exactly Ouroboros, knife, scream, navel gazing, etc., that is ignored by the bot. So thank you, Globus. So it had to be particular, that has to be excluded. So if you ever vote one of each in that particular order, it will not be taken. The French give exists and look how we treat it. I know. Dame Karen said, Matt, that's fine. Thank you for the Matt. Zenomox says, I think what they're reiterating is something like self-alienation is a natural response to imbuing technologies with uncanny human attributes or ability to exert authority, emulate intelligence, which remind us that we are ourselves potentially eventually something else, such as lifeless matter. Maybe, but that's not. If they had said that as clear as you said that, that would be something different. They didn't say that. You said that because that actually makes a lot more sense. Shoveling gave it a knife. Cool. Adam Turner gave it grapes and an A. Thank you. Which, as reiteration goes, got to go with navel gazing and a meh. Viper says, it's such a simple idea. People co-evolve, influencing each other with the products of their mind, which can be considered from their own thing too, buried on a fuck ton of gatekeeping jargon. Yeah, that's kind of what happens in a lot of philosophy too. You know, one thing that I don't do here is I don't read technical philosophy where you've got like tons of formulas on it. And to be fair, like learning the technical gatekeeping, it's technical and gatekeeping because you have to know all the logic and background to access that stuff too. So it's like, yeah, in some sense, you're never getting the analytic gatekeepiness of their technicalities on Philosophy Roulette. I am not sorry about that, but like, yeah, these people have all this stuff and you want to talk about there is some good ideas there, but as you said, it's buried. It's funny because to me, I would think the Ouroboros as navel gazing adjacent, eating its own ideas. Yeah, I needed some symbol of like Ouroboros is very ancient. Like it comes up in like the ancient Egyptian texts. And like it's not navel gazing inherently because it did have meaning back in the day. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Once you're experienced with this Xenomonic, because you say you've read enough French philosophy to kind of see through the madness, then you can get to the ideas. But for an uninitiated, it's not very accessible. Eating its own ass is the opposite of having its head in its ass. There's the other question is it being birthed out of its own mouth? Like maybe it's not eating, maybe it's coming out. All right, what am I going to say? I'm going to give it a brain dance. This is stuff I don't normally think about, and I always have a soft spot for stuff I don't know, so it's going to get a brain dance. It's also going to get a little bit of nog turd because, yeah. And it's going to get a vote meh.
I salute you.
Thank you for the follow, Grease. Grease Carpaccio. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, so, all right, that's about it. Let's see. Because, like, I don't hate this stuff, but I find it just very, like, yeah. Viper says, if I were infinitely flexible, could you shove your head up your ass so far that comes out your mouth? I don't know. I'm not an Ouroboros. Chef says, when you're selecting my critique of accessible and incomplete project or necessitating more background context or motivations, but since I'm more acquainted with kind of tropes, I had to vote slicing and dicing, mostly because it is entertaining for me rather than practical. More to be done, or even interminable, like Hegel would say. Yeah, I mean, not all philosophy is for everybody, and, you know, when you have the background and you might be interested in stuff, some stuff becomes very interesting to you, and that's fine. It's like, I've said this before, like, I was we roasted one of these analytic philosophers a while back. I was at Andrew M. Bailey. I don't like his work, but Andrew M. Bailey is a competent philosopher. I don't like his work, but he is very good at what he does. And it's like, he's real good at what he does. Like, it's fine. I down for an 8 to 10 hour debate leading to the, nah, I don't really do debates. I fucking hate everything. So no, but thanks for asking. But no, I'm not really for, and God, no, 8 to 10 hours sounds like a marathon. I can barely handle my streams, which I cut out after like 3 hours. Yeah. Goodbye. I don't understand how this was or is considered philosophy. Okay, so the grand scheme thing where we're talking about the technology in society. Can you at least appreciate that the way our lives are nowadays with technology everywhere and integrating into all of our lives is going to change how we live and interact with each other? Because that is a fundamental question of how we interact with ourselves, each other, and our world. And so that's why this is definitely lands within certain areas of philosophy. Now, how they go about this, you may have problems with. That's fine too, but this is not it's not so far away from other stuff you might consider to be meaningful in like what is a meaningful life nowadays. I mean, just the short answer.